My grandfather bought land for $1 an acre back in the 30s when people said you were nuts. But he brought the first Angus cattle to southern Burleigh County in North Dakota in 1930. You know, my dad then took over. I went to North Dakota State University, got a degree in animal science, and the day I came home, my dad kind of said, he didn't say this specifically, but basically, it's yours, run it. I think there's more opportunity in agriculture now than ever, but it won't be any simpler, and it never is. But you've got to be willing to adapt, change, look, and find ways to make it work. I took soils classes at NDSU. Nobody ever talked about soil biology or below the ground. It was all about production. It was soil test, maximum input, try to make that work. And I'm not trying to discredit, that's what they thought was the answer at the time. I said I went through Alan Savory's holistic management twice. Even though it's not rocket science, it was a bit confusing to me because in higher education we're taught in black and white, and nothing in life or on a ranch is in black and white. We had equity, but we were gradually strangling the success out of this operation. And I looked in the mirror and said, if I lose this place and I'm the generation that loses it, I won't be able to handle it, and something's got to change. Every year we would go in and raise our credit limit. And that's all fine and good till one year you can't pay the interest. A broken production model that doesn't work. It's high production, high input, lots of machinery, lots of expense, and gradually strangling you. You see it in agriculture today all over the place, and I'm not going to tell anybody what I do is right and what you do is wrong, but I know I spent half my life in that production model, and I know it doesn't work. I grew up in an era where it was wheat and black summer fallow, and on marginal ground that probably should have never been broke up in the first place in this area. We're pretty sandy, but it was blowing and it was eroding something terrible, and you would get sent out to stop the erosion. And so you dig it up again, and and pretty soon your fences are covered. I always tell the story, South Dakota loves us because half of our topsoil's down there. And so what do we do to change that? You know, we got into cover crops. We have 3 goals in our cover crops. Number 1, can we bring soil health back on marginal soils that the organic matter's depleted and you can't raise anything anymore? Number 2, what's the biggest expense for cattle producers in the Northern Plains? It's winter feed costs. My goal is to never feed a bale of hay to a cow. Now, I realize where I live, that's not always possible. You've got to have a backup plan. But when I can do it, and I have done it, we save $200 a head. And number 3, we run a hunting operation here that's nationally acclaimed, but I want to propagate the wildlife. And I'm happy to tell you that we've been pretty successful on all 3 of those. We've got the highest test Burleigh County's ever had on total biology in the soil. I was told that worms would be hard to get in our soil because it's abrasive and sandy a year ago, and all of a sudden we're digging up and there's worms all over the place and the soil is granulated. That's from that biology, from the cover crops, and the other big aspect of that is keeping cattle on the land. We never put cattle in the drainage anymore. We used to always, these corrals behind us here, we'd always bring cattle in all winter and you fed them all winter. Where does that go? That's a creek runs through there. Where does it end up? In the Missouri River. We don't do that anymore. We keep the cattle on the land. It's a natural system. The urine and the manure's going in to support the biology. If they need a backup for feed, we take it to them. We don't bring cattle into the watershed anymore. That doesn't mean we don't graze them, but we graze them short duration and then they're gone. Some people still have the opinion you've got to remove the cattle, they're the problem. Well, we just have to manage it. And the same then as we have our cover crops, we're grazing these cover crops, we're keeping the manure and the urine in the field to support the biology. Now we've improved a natural system that is starting to move our organic matter back up again. So we're seeing that soil health improved, and then you take it to the next step. If you want to put a cash crop on that field, and we've done this, all of a sudden you're growing your own fertilizer through nitrogen from the organic matter. And maybe we've done it to where we haven't put any commercial fertilizer on and had the same yield. We run them side by side. But even if you can't do that every year, maybe you can do a fourth, maybe you can do a half. See, our two holistic goals are improving our profitability or bringing them back, and then improving our quality of life. The two biggest things that we miss in agriculture. Most of us are not profitable, and most of us don't really like what we're doing because we've made it not fun. And part of this whole soil health movement fires me up again, gives me excitement. My boys coming back and being involved, it reinvigorated me. We built some resilience in because of our intensive planned rotational grazing. So we've got grass. We'll get through this year with grass. You know, I know guys now, and it's because they're in season-long grazing. They've been out of grass for 2 months already, or 3. They didn't have grass when we had good years. Season-long means you take them out in May or whenever you take them out, and you leave them there, you never touch them until October or November. They select. So you've got constant overgrazing and undergrazing, and over time your species will narrow, your bare ground will open up, you won't infiltrate the water as well. We've got land on this ranch that had that very sandy, below sand type land. Now it's covered, big blue stem climbed right up those slopes, and that's by putting lots and lots of head of cattle in it, short duration, high animal impact. They stir the soil, graze it hard, and then off with long rest and recovery periods. And people will come and they'll ask me, how did you seed that big blue stem? And I joke, well, a big John Deere air seeder, of course. No, it was the seed bed was there. It was the animals that stimulated and got the seed going again. And now we have vast diversity. You have purple prairie clover all over that, which is a legume. Again, you're building a healthy environment. Start small, see what works, get connected with some mentors. You know, I'm president of North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition. We have a group of mentors, I'm one. Get with those people, they've done this stuff. Somebody's got to help you. I've watched too many places, NRCS comes in through EQIP or whatever, puts in funding, and they put in water, they put in fencing. The guy's going to start a grazing system. He didn't get the backup, and in 2 years, it's back to season-long grazing. We spent all those federal dollars, and he's not made anything because he couldn't take the peer pressure of doing something different. And so you've got to start small. We started by taking one big pasture and divided it twice. And I just rotated, you know, maybe a month in one to the next. And then I just observed, and I like, wow, this seems to be helping. And then we divided. We've got 100 and some pastures on this place now. And we're rotating every 1 to 7 days, depending on the size of the pasture, what we're trying to do, and all that. I don't know if I'll live long enough to make this all perfect, but it's kind of fun going down this path. One of my major goals is turning this operation over in better shape than I got it, and to keep plugging up that hill of conservation and regenerative agriculture.
I'm Hal Weiser. This is Susan Sampson-Liebig, and we're here with Jerry Doan today. And soil biology's done a lot for you in your operation. Talk a little bit about like the nutrient cycle and improvements you've seen in that.
Without getting too scientific, we're just trying to get that biology moving up every year, and if we can do that, then our organic matter starts to come back. You mentioned the nutrient cycle. We've been able to take, and we've done this in a test, take one side of a field, use the normal soil test, fertilize it of what it says, and then take the other half. And if we've had livestock on and cover crops and we're creating that biology, then we take the Haney test, and it shows that our biology is good enough to where we don't need fertilizer. The yield was similar. And my point is, if we're really trying to bring profitability back, and we can do some of these things without these input costs, And then the other big benefit is we're building soil health long-term for generations to come. We've got some really sandy land that wasn't very productive, and all of a sudden, you grow this very diverse mix of cover crops, come back with a cash crop, and you're getting some pretty good yields.
You got
22.
22 species. So years ago when this land was formed, was it a monoculture? What
Pretty much,
what was
yeah.
it?
You're going after a monoculture, nature's going, what's wrong with you? You know, in native grassland, what do we have, 100 or 200 different species? You know, I'll get people drive by this and they'll go, your crop looks like heck, you didn't spray it or whatever. Well, it's a 22 species cover crop mix. It's for soil health, but I have to laugh, so.
Yeah. And you got to think about what's going on underneath the ground too. I mean, with the 22 species, all the different root structure and root systems that are in this crop and in this cover crop. And if you're in a monoculture, maybe a 2-crop rotation, that soil and that biology only saw those two plants. So
Right.
it's a big benefit to.
Well, and we try to have all 4 different crop types growing out here at some time in our rotation, and the cover crops probably have all of them in them at some point. Now this is a warm season mix, so it's a little less on, but we do have some cool season mixes on the ranch here. We've got several legumes in here, and we never fertilize our cover crops. Now I've been told sometimes, you should fertilize them. So I did it one year, and I didn't see the difference. And I'm not saying, maybe you could jump start them a little with a starter, but if we can get these legumes nodulating, and in normal years we do, and you're creating your own nitrogen, again, one of my main goals is profitability, not put tons of inputs in. So if we can do that naturally, let's work that way.
Jerry, how do you come up with what cover crop mix you're going to plant?
Sure. Well, and it's all over the place, and a lot of it is cost. Trying to keep the cost down. Like one year cowpea went like this. Well, we took it out of the mix. And we try to get something that's really good for wildlife, you know, so we'll throw in some oats or some of these crops that don't cost very much. There's lots of things. You know, we try to get some brassicas in to go down and scavenge nitrogen, open the soil up. Then we try to get some legumes to do the nitrogen for us. And then it's a matter of looking at what's good for wildlife and what's good to winter graze. And again, as I tell people, don't worry so much about do you have this or this or this. It's get quite a bit of diversity. Make sure you have some of those crop types, legumes, things, and then what are your goals? If it's strictly for soil health, that you look at it a little different than we are, where we want wildlife, and then something that stands up a bit when we winter graze this, because you can graze through snow and these cows will dig for it. But if you get freezing and thawing and packing with ice, that's where you run into trouble. The one thing I would tell people, find what works for you, and then don't care what Hal Weiser, Jerry Doan, or anybody else says. Go with it, and that's what we've done. It's been pretty successful. Yeah, we could divide it up and maybe make it a little better, but right now this works pretty good. So
You are working with the sandier soil,
right.
And so I get asked a lot, so how can I build my aggregate stability and build my organic matter on my sandy soil?
I think if we're really going to truly build soil health, we've got to partner livestock guys with crop guys and get livestock back on the land. Yeah, you can build soil health without them, but it's going to be slower, and I don't know if you'll ever get where you want to get. These grasslands, this native prairie, these croplands were all built on livestock on the land by big buffalo and horses and everything that was here before we got here. And so that's what we need. That's why we're building biology in the soil. And if we can somehow get crop guys that don't want that to partner up with guys that do want that, and you know, we're an independent bunch, so that's not an easy task, but I think we've got to get there if we're truly going to build soil health across the gamut of the landscape.
Plenty of residue on the soil surface. You got corn stubble here from last year. As far as a soil health assessment, that's one of the things we look at is do you have the soil covered? And you want to, you want that to decay too, because that's some of your nutrients that are in that residue on the surface. So how fast that decays, that's something we look at. You know, we'd like to see this corn residue pretty much gone by next year.
Right.
And then this residue takes over as a soil cover. So that's one of the things we look at when we assess soil health.
Quite honestly, when I seed into this stuff, I want soil 100% covered. And because if I have any moisture, in this field, as dry as we were, there was moisture here. I could take you to fields that weren't like that. They didn't have the residue on them. Now, and I get it, we want to get rid of it. But in a year like this, we're probably better off if we don't get rid of it too fast, because otherwise we're going to evaporate it.
It is kind of self-regulating though, because if it gets too dry, then the biology just isn't going to work anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
So it conserves the moisture and conserves the residue on the surface, protecting that residue. So if you start getting rain again, then things will kick in, and then you produce more biomass for cover next year. So.
But it also kind of helps to regulate the soil temperature.
Right.
Because when you're looking at soil biological activity, you're looking at not just the moisture side, but also the temperature side. So they don't like to be hot.
No, you bet.
Yeah.
Well, and one point I should make, because it's really hard for a cattle guy, if there's something out there to graze or hay, you usually took it. Right. And one of the biggest challenges was try to leave 50% to feed the soil. You almost have to beat yourself, because you're like, God, I could graze for another 2 weeks, you know. And it's hard to decide. You're out here in the middle of the winter, it's cold, there's snow, when is it 50%? But there just comes a point, because it's knocked down, it might be covered by some, you're gonna have to say, maybe we took enough. And you know, maybe it's not perfect, but you've got to feed the soil. We never understood that very well.
So one of the other things we do is we look at soil, and we talk about soil aggregates a little bit. So just your typical tool here. See if I can get it in the ground when it's dry. Well, we got a little bit of profile there. So there's all kinds of
A lot of residue, litter,
organic matter that's going to break down over time for your nutrient cycle. As far as structure, there's a little bit of platiness in here. That's not unusual for a sandy loam. We got aggregates at the surface. And what's interesting in a drought is, of course, biology hasn't been working much this year either, so you can go a little bit backwards on some of your aggregate stability in a drought year. But as soon as you get some rain, then that kind of picks up again when biology starts working. So, well, you can tell there's not a whole lot of soil moisture down there, because these plants just, I mean, you have had them in since June 1st. And so we're almost
we don't have any subsoil moisture, you know, where we'd get through something like this a bit, but there is none. We ate that up last year.
Yeah, because the drought started last year.
Why don't we try digging down here where there's a little more vegetation. There might be a little more moisture yet down in that low spot. So Susan, this kind of, you know, the other day you were talking when we were at Minokan Farm about the difference in soil types.
Yeah.
When you do your assessment on soil health, know where you're at. Obviously we know we're in a low area, swale area, so it's a little bit wetter. So you got to be consistent in where you do your assessment.
Yeah.
If you're going to compare year to year or a field to field, you got to be on the same soil type. So obviously we have more moisture. There's probably a water table here that some of these plants were able to get down to. Okay. So one of the things we want to look for is, we do have some.
We do. And that's, you know, pretty close to the surface too.
You see the aggregates on the surface are a lot more consistent down here. One of the other things we look for is that around that rhizosphere too. If the soil's sticking to it, that means the biology's working around that soil's root. So you can see that in that, what is this, Sudan? So there's some other plants we want to dig up here, you think, or see what's going on?
Sure.
So yesterday we're looking at some sunflower plants that did have some jay rooting on them. They got a nice fibrous root system. There's a little bit of
There's a little
J
bit of
root
jaying, but
for the most part, though. I mean, not a real strong root system just
No.
because it's dry right now. So, that's buckwheat. So that's the benefit of a mixed cover crop, is you get all these different root systems. That's more of a fibrous root system. This has a tap root. You got brassicas in here that have a tap root. That canola's not going to have much of a root or whatever that is. Again,
no, it's
There.
finding its way though
yeah,
down.
it's straight.
Yes.
It's not big, but when there's no moisture, you don't want to do too much. So if we're going to assess this area, Susan, for conservation planning, we'd say, well, it's got great cover, right?
Yes, it has the cover.
And we looked at the root system. We had the rhizosphere. We had some biology that's working in the soil. We didn't look at pores. We could have looked at pores. And you can see
We have pores.
yeah.
Yeah.
some macro pores in there from either decayed roots or earthworm activity. There's just all kinds of organic matter that's
Yeah.
just kind of
Just waiting, and so
breaking
as-
down, but look at
as-
how that's breaking
yeah.
down.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So biology is doing its job. Right now, this soil's too dry for biology even to do anything. But
Yeah. So once we get moisture, the biology is really going to be revved up, and then
Yeah.
that residue is really going to start to get incorporated into the soil,
Right.
into
Mm-hmm.
those.
How long does
carbon
it take for biology to come back after a drought like this? It's kind of dead or it's dormant,
They're
and
just dormant.
you know,
at
just
this
dormant.
Moment, they're there.
They're there. They're
They are
just
there.
dormant.
They're just dormant. And so once the conditions are just right for them, they bounce back.
They kick
very
in.
quick.
Not that long then.
No.
no,
Okay.
Well, Jerry, thank you for your time and being with us and sharing your story and your path down soil health.